center parking lot agreement.
Mr. Mayor and Council, you recall the last time we did an amendment, it was because of another development that had taken an area that had originally been a parking area for the event center. So now that another part of the parking area is being taken for the Town Place Suites, under our agreement, the district's agreement for parking for the event center, we needed to find some additional spaces. And those additional spaces are those new parallel parking spaces that are on the north and south side of Florentine Road. And so what they had was 1,085. They've got to have 1,000. They were taking 110, and so they had to find, tell me what math that is. That sounds like 25, okay? And they're in fact bringing 36. So that keeps us over 1,000, makes that agreement possible. So we need to approve the second amendment to that parking agreement.
And Mr. Legler, just to confirm, they're not parallel spots, right? They're angled. Like
I'm sorry, I call it parallel, but you're right. They're
Like on
angled-
Gurley
angled
Street
parking.
is what we're looking at?
That's
like
correct.
that?
Yeah, I used the wrong term.
All right. Vice
So,
Mayor?
Ivan, I wasn't here when we did this 1,000 parking requirement. Can you briefly tell me about that? Because I think the development around Finley is a great idea, and I don't want us to get to a point where this 1,000 parking spot is holding us back from doing cool things there. So tell me, because we're down to 1,011, which means we're done doing anything there.
Well, we're not necessarily done because there are some other areas that could be added to those
Okay.
parking areas. The history goes back to 2006.
Briefly.
I was going to say,
I was in your
you've
class
got at
today.
least 15, 20 minutes.
No, because I have dinner plans, so, and I was in your class today.
Okay. Well, the bottom line is that the feeling was that the new event center in 2006 would need at least 1,000 parking spaces.
Okay.
And that's an arbitrary number, but is the number that was reached. And at that time, it was two different private entities that were contracting with each other. When we went through the bankruptcy in 2017, one of those entities transferred the agreement to this district. And so now we're a party to that agreement with the private landowner. So your concern is that as we keep trying to hang on to 1,000, are we going to stifle downtown growth? Granted, the 1,000 is an arbitrary number. It started out at 1,300. Now we're down to this 1,000, whatever it is, 15, 11. There is another area that we can add that will bring that back up and will allow some additional development. When the day comes, I suppose we could reduce that, but it'll take an analysis of whether the event center is being harmed. And we want to make sure that is still a viable operation. So obviously those things can still be done. It's an agreement. Agreements can be changed. But for now, we're trying to protect the event center.
Does it have anything to do with the amount of seats in the Finley Center?
It might well have been, yes.
So
might
like,
have
does
been.
it match our parking requirement in our parking standards? So many seats per,
I don't remember the exact basis for the number, but I believe that would have been
Okay.
the basis.
all right, thank you.
I have a comment along with that. I had an opportunity, actually, both Councilwoman Greer and I spoke with the general manager of the Finley Toyota Center immediately following the Ringo Starr All-Star performance. And he mentioned to us that it was at full capacity with 3,300 people there. And even by dividing that in two, thinking that, two people per car, that's 1,650. And you deduct the 1,011 and you're coming up with 600 or plus additional parking spaces where people are parking on the streets. They're walking down Main Street, in the dark and the potholes and the dirt and the mud and, parking wherever they can park. And I'm just curious if all of these, if this is being taken into consideration. And I haven't heard any mention of the additional public parking that the Legato apartment complex was going to, during events, let us use there at their facility.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly the additional area that we're thinking about that will be designated for the event center. And that hasn't yet been constructed, so that hasn't been added to this agreement, but there is some talk about doing that.
So it's not a sure thing, is what you're saying? It's
Oh,
just,
it'll eventually, I believe, be part of that agreement, but right now it hasn't yet been constructed, so they haven't done that.
okay, all right, very good, thank you.
And just to be clear on the concert for Ringo Starr, it was at capacity at where the stage was. It wasn't at capacity for the building. That the building would have a full length of the stage, so it was just for that night. So I don't want to confuse that with your numbers, just so you're aware of that.
Just using that as,
So like I said, I just want to make sure your numbers are reflective of that. Do you have any other questions, council? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the Second Amendment to Event Center Modified Parking Access Agreement with Four Seasons Investment Company LLC by electronic vote.
I'll second.
All by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2B, conveyance portion shared parking lot 13S.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman and board members, the agreement requires, of course, that as they build in this area, the property has to now be conveyed back to the entity that first conveyed it to the district. And so as each little piece gets removed from the agreement, it has to be conveyed back, and that's what we're doing here.
Any questions for Mr. Legler? If not, I'll take a motion. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to authorize E ECCFD Chair to sign the attached special warranty deed to Four Seasons Investment Company LLC per Town Code 2-02-040D by electronic vote.
I'll
All in fa-
second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned.
Passes unanimously.